The greatest power in the universe is the power of love. Because the nature of the divine, and you can experience this nature in mystical experience. And when you have a mystical experience, what you meet is not only an amazing intelligence, and not only an incredible force, but what you meet and what you know and what your whole being becomes possessed by is an shattering love. A love that is insanely passionate for you, that loves you beyond anything that you can imagine, and enters into you to reveal to you the great secret of your being, which is that the love you connect with in God lives in you as your deepest secret. And as that experience grows in you, you come to understand the other side of that tremendous secret, which is that when you start to act in your life from that place of burning love that you know is God in you, then your actions aren't only wise, they're not only intelligent and helpful, but they are also, by the grace of the supreme mystery, they are blessed. And they are blessed by the miraculous force and power and glory and majesty and intelligence of love itself. And those actions that are done from this sacred burning love are actions that in the middle of disaster and apocalypse and madness and menace and chaos can flame out with the miraculous power of God and transform everything. I want to tell you a story about the power of love in which you will see very, very clearly how shattering and all-transforming this power can be if you have the guts to unleash it in your life. This story is about a very humble, old black woman in South Africa. This humble, old black woman in South Africa, who was a poor woman, had lived through perhaps the greatest tragedy that a human being can live through, which is to see her husband and her son tortured to death in front of her by the same Afrikaner torturer, Mr. Verwerk. And she was brought in one of the Justice and Reconciliation court sessions face to face with Mr. Verwerk. And the judge said to her, "You have suffered the worst that a human being can suffer at the hands of this man who admits that he tortured your husband and your son to death. What do you have to say to this man?" And this old black woman looked at the torturer of her husband and son in the eyes, and she said this. She said, "First of all, I would like you to take me to the place where you tortured my son to death, because he'd beaten him in front of her, but he hadn't killed him in front of her. And I want you to take me there so I can have a few handfuls of dust, because that is all that remains to me of my child." And then she paused and she looked at Mr. Verwerk and she said, "I am an old woman. And I have no one. But I still have a tremendous power of love inside me. So, Mr. Vivek, I would like you to come and visit me every month. And I would like you to be my son, so that I can love you with the power of love that still lives in me. And the courtroom was completely silent, and she turned to two of her women friends, and she was crippled. She said, I want you to support me as I walk across this courtroom and I show Mr. Vivek that in the spirit of the one I love more than life itself, my Savior, Jesus Christ, he has been completely forgiven. Because to the power of love, nothing is impossible. And as she walked across the courtroom, Mr. Vivek fainted. And everybody started to sing Amazing Grace. And I believe that Mr. Vivek fainted for two reasons. I believe he fainted because never in his wildest imagination could he imagine that someone that he had caused so much horror and suffering to would not want him to suffer also, but want him to be free of the spirit that had driven him into that darkness, and want him to know the truth of love, and want him to be transformed. Never, ever, ever in his wildest dreams did he imagine that this kind of consciousness could exist. And I believe the second thing that made him faint was that when she said those words, I want you to be my son, from her flamed out a nuclear charge of love so wild and pure and fiery and intense that it struck him down, not to kill him, but to resurrect him in a new dimension of truth. And I believe that each one of us has that lightning nuclear power waiting in the core of our being for us to have the courage to feel and know and unleash in sacred action at the core of our lives. And that when you and I discover the secret that this love is our deepest nature, and that when we act from this love, we act with its nuclear glory and power and majesty and force and dignity and grandeur and miraculous strength, then you and I will rouse ourselves from our paralysis and our despair and our cynicism in face of this overwhelming world crisis, and we will rise up in the power of our nature of love, and we will start acting together in miraculous ways with the miraculous power of love to transform this apocalyptic nightmare into the birth canal of a new divine humanity that can co-create with God everything afresh.